In Time Doctor, there are many different reports that you can use to monitor your employees' work time and activity. These reports frame track data in different ways to help improve your business. We are going to look at the Activity Summary Report, which is found by going to the top navigation and clicking on the drop-down menu that says Reports, then clicking Activity Summary. On this page, you will see a submenu just below the main top navigation. Below this, the main area of the page, a series of columns which organizes the information on the report. There's a lot to go over in this area, but first, let's talk about the new submenu options. On the left, you can select which users you would like on your report. You can select particular users, or you can select by group. Click on the Group tab and deselect the All Groups option. Then, make your selection and click away from the menu to update the page. To the right of this, you will see the Export Options button. When you select this, a pop-up will appear. You can export a report in either CSV or XLS file types. You will also choose which time format you want for the export. You may select more than one. The final option to choose from is your user identification, which allows you to add more information to the report. Back on the main page, the next option on the submenu is the time zone. By default, your company time zone, which is established in your company settings, will be selected. If you would like to change time zones, you can do so in this dropdown. Note, not all time zones are available. You may only change to a time zone that has a user in it. The final area of this submenu is devoted to changing your time selection for the report. You can select by day, week, month, or a specific date range. To select the date range, first select the start date, then select the end date of your range. The date range selection is important because it will change the variable percentage data on your reports, such as the idle minutes percentages. We'll explain how those numbers are calculated in just a minute. So let's look at our report. The first time you visit a report, default columns will be active. If you have altered this report in the past, it will include the columns you last selected. To change which columns appear, you must use the Columns button, which is found just above your report to the right. Notice that for each column option, there is a percentage option that goes with it. You can see the difference in these two columns. The percentage option gives you a percent out of the total track time, whereas the other gives you a fixed total for the time period you have established. For this demo, we are going to keep all of the columns active to make it easier to review them. Moving from left to right, we see the name of the user, followed by the total time worked. Total time worked is the total time for the selected time period, which again, you select in the submenu. The next four columns concern idle time. Idle time is measured in both seconds and minutes. A second or minute is considered idle if the user does not use the mouse or the keyboard during that time. The same goes for each second. It's important to note here that you should expect more idle seconds than minutes, given that most people are not hitting their keyboard or mouse each and every second. Since people take time to think or read, the totals and percentages of idle seconds will be higher than idle minutes. As mentioned earlier, these percentages will change if you change the selected time period. This is because the value is calculated by taking the amount of idle seconds or minutes and dividing it by the total time worked. As you change the total time for the report, your percentages will begin to look very different. So what does this information about idle time tell you? It's important to keep in mind the particular job roles when evaluating idle time. Some roles in your company may not require as much active time, or certain activities are not always done on the computer, such as phone calls or physical tasks. When comparing idle time, it is suggested that you compare this data, percentages and amounts, with others in a similar role. You could do this easily by putting everyone who shares a role in the same user group. Then, you can select that group and have a more accurate comparison. It's also important to get a bigger picture for each employee. We can do that by looking at all the data together. So for now, let's continue on. In the next two columns, you will see time spent on unproductive websites or apps. These two columns are visible in percentage and time values. Websites and apps are rated on the productivity ratings page that is accessible to admins only. Managers can also rate productivity if they are allowed to via the company settings page. The setting is called Allow Managers to Set Productivity Ratings. Productivity ratings can be assigned on the whole for the whole company or for groups. Though it is tempting to only set unproductive sites for the whole company, considerations should be made beforehand. As an example, time spent on social media accounts is generally considered unproductive. But if you have a marketing team, social media sites would not be considered unproductive, they would actually be critical to productivity. In order to accurately set these up, you will want to take time to consider carefully what your users and groups may be doing during the day. And so, again, because these are customized for user groups, it is important that we compare the time and percentage data that we see in the activity summary to users in similar roles. Moving on, the final columns show manual time entered and mobile time. Manual time is time that the user or manager entered themselves, if they are allowed to do so. To learn more about this, please refer to our video about editing time. Mobile time is time that the user spent on the mobile app. Depending on your company and what you do, you may or may not have any data in these columns. There are two final features to discuss in the activity summary. First, if you head back to the name column and hover your mouse over the row, you can see a small gray button appear. Clicking on the gray button to the right of the name takes you to a view of the user's dashboard. This gives you immediate access to more information, such as current screenshots and work time. The second feature is found by selecting the user's row, or rather, clicking anywhere on that user's row other than the gray box. This opens a new section in your page that breaks down the particular user's columns even more. Here, you can select between idle minutes, seconds, unproductive websites and apps, in both manual and mobile time. As you can see, this gives you an itemized view of the data showing more detail about those percentages. In these breakdowns, you can see the percentage of minutes or seconds on each task that was idle. In addition, using these tabs, you can change between websites and apps, projects and tasks, or low activity screencasts. If your user doesn't have screencasts enabled, you won't see anything in this final tab. The advantage of this detailed information is twofold. On the one hand, it helps you identify problem areas in an employee's workflow, whether they are spending too much time on an unproductive website or idling too much on a certain task. On the other hand, it may reveal that the idle time isn't actually a problem. If, for example, much of the idle time were just the result of a team meeting over a web video service. In either case, having this information can be vital to improving your company's productivity while working remotely. From here, you can also continue to click on other rows to pull up other users' data to review or compare. When you are done, you can select the X button in the upper right corner to remove this pop-up. This concludes the overview of the Activity Summary Report. Hopefully you found this video helpful in managing your company employees as they work remotely. If you have more questions, feel free to visit our help pages or contact Time Doctor support at any time.